Well, excellent. Well, today, thank you for joining, and thank you for the time. Today we're going to be talking about financial planning for college. This is a topic that's very near and dear to me. I've got young children, and I actually just went to a kindergarten graduation this morning. So I got a little bit of time, but I'm in this boat with quite a few folks as we start to plan for college, education, what our costs are, and, start building the framework and making sure that we're working towards, that goal of paying for college. For those of you who don't know us, I'm going to do a little bit of a quick introduction on Bogart Wealth. Bogart Wealth is a registered investment advisor. We have almost $3 billion in assets under management, and comes across about 1,300 households. We operate under a fiduciary standard, which means that our advice and guidance has your best interest, and it comes first. We use institutional custodians. We actually clear through Charles Schwab, so we don't actually hold assets here at Bogart Wealth, but it's held at Charles Schwab. We're a fee-only wealth management firm, and we've got offices here in the Woodlands, a smaller office down in Houston, and then we've got our headquarters in McLean, Virginia. As part of the firm, I do want to highlight James Bogart. I mean, his name is on the marquee. He's just done a phenomenal job of growing the resources and capabilities of the firm. Here's our team of advisors. When you engage with us, you have a dedicated advisor, but we also do work, collectively to ensure advice and guidance that is provided is in your best interest. We have our leadership teams. We've got full marketing, planning, operations teams. Most of these folks that you see here are in the Virginia office, and they're often behind the scenes, but they make things go for us. So this is just an overview of the team. We manage our investment strategies in-house. We'll highlight Alex Spencer. The guy just absolutely loves the markets. When he was in college, he got a chance to manage some of his college endowment fund, and ever since then, he has just absolutely fallen in love with with the markets and understanding. And he leads our team as chief investment officer here at Bogart Wealth. Ultimately, when we look at financial planning, I mean, and today's topic, college, funding college expenses, I mean, is a big part in a financial plan. Today's, discussion is going to be more educational, but ultimately, if we want to get into the details of, how much to save, how much can I save, and how much or should I be saving, how does that work? I would highly encourage you to engage with us, reach out to myself, Bogart Wealth in general. And ultimately, we plug that in as a component in the financial plan. But when we look at financial planning, I mean, there's basically four pillars of it. And we look at, of Bogart Wealth's offering. We look at investment management, financial planning, tax optimization, tax preparation. But when it comes down to the plan, again, we look at cash flow, withdrawal strategies. We have, tailored investment strategies. We always have a tax efficient component overlay of the advice and guidance we provide. We also provide estate and planning and trust advisement here. We're not lawyers ourselves, but we do partner with attorneys in the areas to make sure that we can provide a solution in that front. When we develop a plan, this is not something that we just have a plan, a strategy, and we're done. We give it to you. I mean, this is something that we constantly review and monitor, and then it goes. I mean, life gives us curveballs, and it's not very predictable. So we want to make sure that we have a plan in place that encompasses different scenarios that we may face. Again, as I said earlier, we have an office in McLean, Virginia, here in the Houston, Gessner area, and then I'm here in the Woodlands office. All right, so college funding for financial planning for college. We really kind of divided this into two different stages. You got your early stage and your late stage. And your early stage is all about saving for it. How much do I need to save, and what vehicles can I save it in? Most popular is a 529. I do see instances where we use Roth IRAs for expenses, or UTMAs and UGMAs, but I don't see that very often these days. So overwhelmingly, You know, 529 is the most popular vehicle that we use to fund for and save for college. You know, late stages, you know, that's how can we control the cost of college? You know, that we're done saving. Now we're determining which college we want to go to. You know, we look at financial aid and what other merits and funding and discounts that are available to us, and stretch, you know, whatever we have saved to make sure that we cover our costs. You know, some of this is going to be, you know, we're getting a lot of statistics and a lot of updates, and even to me, as the title of the slide says, you know, tuition sticker shock. You know, right here, visually, we're looking at 2 years in-state public schools, out-of-state public, and private schools. So we can see the elevation and the changes and the cost that if we, you know, if in-state is usually most cases where I see, but I do see a lot of out-of-state public, which would go up in cost. And then ultimately, when we get into private, we know that, you know, private college and private education is more expensive. So tuition sticker shock. But tuition is not the whole story. You know, tuition is, you know, our education, but we also have housing, food, books and supplies, transportations, and just other costs in general. You know, so when we break this down, you can see again between the 2 years, public 4-year, you know, public 4-year out of state, and then you know, private education, that we can see the funding in here, the allocation of tuition and fees. You know, we also have a big expense within housing and food, you know, books and supplies, and then we break down, you know, transportation. So, you know, tuition is not the whole story. I mean, hey, I mean, we still got to live and take care of ourselves. You know, that's part of it. And I want to make sure that we don't overlook that when we start looking at the total cost of education expenses for college. You know, ultimately, college education and the cost for it has been skyrocketing. You can see that the trending data back for the last 30 years, I mean, we have seen a big uptick in that. You know, going forward, you know, from this is average, right? These are national averages that we're starting to see, you know, a little bit of a tail off in the growth of that expense in there. Of course, these figures are adjusted for inflation, but ideally want to grab, you know, the trending data line for the cost of each. Using a calculator. You know, I've got 3 boys, and I've spent and you know, the oldest is 6. So I spent a lot of time on preparing and looking at these college expenses. This one's through calculator.net, you know, college cost. I mean, you know, as we start to build the framework and we get the thoughts and the ideas out of our head and we want to see real figures, you know, this is a very useful tool in terms of you know, how much is it going to cost. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of variables, but this is you know, as part of the first stage, early stage, and making sure that we get an idea of an accurate idea of what that cost would be. You know, of course, these calculators are pretty straightforward. When we, you know, how long we got till we start college, you know, what is our current savings balance? You know, what do we, you know, percentage of return in there, annual cost, and it'll give it to us up here as total annual costs. You know, for 4-year, you can do private or you can do 2-year as well. But highly encourage it. I just get on these calculators and play with it and get an understanding. So where to save? I mentioned it earlier. You know, 529 is the most popular vehicle that I see and involved with in terms of, you know, saving for college. So pros and cons. You know, the 529, you know, you can get a break on financial aid and you get to retain control of your assets. And one thing about it is you do lose a little bit of flexibility in how to use the assets. I mean, using for other than education expenses can result in a tax bill. I mean, so, you know, the beauty of it is we get tax deferred growth and tax-free distributions as long as those distributions go towards, you know, college expenses. You know, if we use it for something else, then we incur a penalty on the withdrawal from it. So that's the flexibility. I mean, if you have a Roth IRA, In a Roth IRA, I don't see it often I don't see it very often in the usage of it, but essentially you can access those funds without a 10% penalty if you access it before 59 and a half, as long as you use it on qualified higher education expenses. UGMAs and UTMA, those you have more variability in what you can use the funds on, but you don't have control of the assets. Once there's age of majority, things transfer and it's out of your control. But yeah, 529s primarily and definitely the most popular way to fund and save for college, and I would highly encourage it. So the uses for it, this can get a little complicated. Ultimately it's for tuitions, room and boards, books and fees, and study abroad, credits. It's not all study abroad programs, but it is selective in it. The room and board, that is more specific to on-campus housing. Now, there are instances to where if you have a child that is living off campus, that you can use the 529 to help pay for those expenses up to the cost of what on-campus housing would cost. Another way, let's say on-campusing costs $1,000 a month. An outside apartment costs $2,000. Well, you could use $1,000 from the 529 to pay part of the $2,000 monthly rent on off-campus housing in there. So 529s, they've also been in the news lately with the Secure Act changes. The kind of the concern around 529s has been overfunding them, right? So once we have this balanced in there, if we have scholarships or financial aid, we don't use it all. What do we do with it, right? Because it's very penal in the fact that if we don't use it for education, then we've got penalties on it. First of all, if you have multiple children, you can change beneficiaries to it. Another benefit is we can pay a $10,000 lifetime limit to pay back student loans. And then now there's you can roll over the excess into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary of the account. It's a little restrictive. It's up to $35,000. Income rules do apply, and it's on a yearly basis. But the total is $35,000. So essentially, you're looking at $7,000 a year until the $35,000 is depleted. Also, the 529 has to be in effect for like 15 years. The account has to be open for it. So strategic use, when you have it, if we don't have 100% funding over it. Of college, we have a lower amount. We spread it across all 4 years, and we can supplement the other income streams that we use to pay for those expenses. If we have higher amounts, we also can use it for grad school expenses as well. So we wanted to save some of it because those rates and tuitions and things are even higher. So it can be used for that as well. So that's early stage. So late stage, again, we're gonna have a lot of statistics here that I believe that are very eye-opening. But ultimately, we're kind of getting up close to college. We're applying for financial aid. In parentheses here, even if you don't think you will qualify, I want to reiterate this point because, I through some of this, data we're going to review, there's a lot of aid that's out there that we're not even, I don't see we're even trying to get. And then also, we want to stretch whatever we have and the funds that we have and use it, the most beneficial way. So question, which school path is typically the least expensive? When we look at it, we can have choosing a 4-year public college, starting at a 2-year and transferring to a 4-year, starting at a public college and transferring to a private college, or starting at and finishing at a 4-year private university. It's a little bit of a trick question when we look at it, but essentially all the above could be true based on the different circumstances. The key point here is transferring, and we'll look at it. But when we transfer, we have a tendency that increases a cost of a degree up to $14,000 on average. We'll kind of dig into that a little bit. It's an expensive reality when transfers come in. We can see that transferring from private to public, this is a percentage increase in the cost that leads to it. More than 1 in 3 students transfer among 4-year colleges. So it is very important to have that initial planning and that outlook, kind of a direction that we want to go. Just knowing that, the loss of credits, different costs, if we go out of state, in state, we just know that transferring is an event that does trigger higher college expenses. While starting at community college, and this is a viewpoint that I think is very popular, that, hey, I'm going to start at a community college, do my basic core classes, then I'm going to transfer to a major university. The statistics say that there's a significant amount that when we do that on average, instead of having college expenses for 4 years, that is now stretched out to 6 years. And that does, we're paying for college longer, and it does increase those costs. Research says that, almost 40% of college students have some kind of transfer at least once within 6 years. Changing majors, changing colleges, this is another big one. That's another way that results in lost college credits. If they don't transfer to another university or to another school, then we lose credit for things that we've already paid for and taken, and thus increasing our cost. So, to reduce that overall cost, it is worth the time and effort in finding, the best fit, for your student, your kids. So types of aid. Again, we don't want to look at this on a need versus merit-based category. The biggest thing is making sure that we get a discount, or we are taking advantage of aid that is available to us. When we look at merit-based, that is your scholarships and your academics, your athletics of some. Typically, it's for the entire 4 years, but not all colleges give these types of scholarships. The other form of aid is need-based aid. This is determined by FAFSA. Which a CSS profile, which ultimately, it's a questionnaire that looks into your profile, your finances, and it starts to look on the needs-based side of it. They grant scholarships from the university, gets reevaluated on a yearly basis. And really, almost all colleges have some level of address some level of need to the students, but again, majority leave much of it uncovered. So I want to highlight on that point that, hey, even if you don't think you qualify for it, it is worth going through the process. Again, this just kind of highlights it that, again, what matters is getting the discount. Doesn't matter if we're looking at needs-based or merit aid or any kind of combination of both. And this is, this is pretty recent. When you look at it, nearly 3/4 of undergraduates receive some type of financial aid. Of the undergraduates that received that in the academic year, 72 and 72% of it. The average amount of aid received was $14,000. That's impactful when we're looking at overall costs. And then again, 55% of all undergraduates receive federal student aid, while 23% receive state and 28% receive institution aid. So it's available and it's out there. We just have to put in the effort to try to qualify for it. Among households that didn't fill out the FAFSA in 21-22, 36% said they didn't do so because they thought their income was too high. I mentioned that just earlier. Even if you think it's too high, please, go ahead and go through the process. You can see the amount of it. It's almost $18 million applications, during 2020-21 that was submitted to it. Over the last decade, the average grant aid, per full-time undergraduate student has doubled. it used to be, roughly $5,000. Now it's up over $10,000. So we're seeing an increase in what's available. Over 85% of the students receive some form of financial aid, whether that is a needs-based or merit-based. The average, grant scholarship, again, that $14,000 seems to be a very popular number in here in terms of average amount of aid that is available to us. According to the Sallie Mae, only 70% of families submitted the FAFSA for 21 and 22. So we have a lot to do that. There's a lot of room and a lot of availability, to do that. I did have a question that pop up. I will address this. I mean, there is a service you can recommend that could maximize the FAFSA completion. Yes, I want you to email me directly at devans@Bogart Wealth, and I can do that for you. There are third parties that we have access to that are familiar with that are they are experts on this whole process. The same, Sallie Mae report about who applied for the FAFSA said that roughly 20% of the families who received the financial aid offered or appealed more aid, and 73% of those appeals were granted for more aid. Again, so we're seeing this access to these funds. We just got to make sure that we're making effort to get there. One of the biggest misconceptions about FAFSA is that the aid is reserved for low-income students, with 25% of families thinking that's the case. It is not. I've seen it, who applies for it from all, both ends and far on the spectrum of income and who applies for it. Ultimately, when we look at it from the FAFSA standpoint, I mean, it's a free application. There may be some prerequisites for other sources of aid. It's always free, and everybody gets the same questions. The CSS profile is sometimes required as part of that process. Again, nominal cost for the applications. It's cost for each additional school, and questions are customized based on your situation. So it's a little more individual for the profile form. Again, for general education, referencing the question earlier, the studentaid.gov and how to apply for it. I mean, they're very. I mean, even the general help here through the direction of the website is pretty good. And I would recommend going through that. So the FAFSA form specifically. It's filled out fall of the senior year, and each fall, therefore, after. It's going to determine both federal and individual college levels. They often required to be considered for merit-based grants and scholarships, and it is required for the federal student loan program. It does create, a great deal of confusion and stress. But it's, again, I want to put the emphasis on, we can work through it. And as asked, there are services available to help go through that and ease this process. Ultimately, so it looks at an asset and an income assessment on the FAFSA. So when it looks at parents, it is going to look at up to 5.64% of the assets that are in your name. And it also looks at qualifying income, which is up to 45% of your current income levels. It also looks at, assets and funds that are in your, in the student's name. They look up to 20% of that value. And if they do have income, they look up to 50% of the income. Grandparents, not assessed at all in this. So it's really the parents and the students and the assets in their name. So mistakes to avoid when filling out as a parent. You do not include your retirement savings in your assets. Don't do it. And then when it looks to home value, we only want to include the equity in our home. Technically, without the equity, we don't own the part that we owe it on. So we want to and only include the home equity line or the amount in there. Okay. So the estimator, again, I would look at this. They will add, I got another question that came up, says the 529 considered an asset for the student or the parent. It will be you are the grantor of it. So it will be in your name as the student is the beneficiary of it. So it will be it'll be on the parents. Again, it's not a very long, process, but there is some confusion around it. Again, I get on these websites, I've spent time looking at it, and trying to get familiar with it. I mean, granted, I'm a long ways away, but I do have clients and I do have, colleagues and associates that are going through this process as well. The CSS profile. I mean, it's governed by the College Board's online, financial aid application. It is required by colleges when they are looking at, scholarship programs. Ultimately it's used to award non-federal financial aid funds. Opens up in October each year. It does collect more detailed information than the FAFSA, right? I mean, remember, it creates more of a profile and asks questions specifically to your situation. But again, permits families to provide special circumstances versus the catch-all of the FAFSA in there. So some of the statistics here. I mean, there are 494 public colleges. The 2024 average undergraduate tuition and fees of the schools is 10,486 for in-state and 22,956 for out-of-state students. The average graduate tuition and the fees, and we saw that the cost increases up to 21,000. When we look at SAT scores of enrolled students, the average the average acceptance rate is 77% for public colleges. Ultimately, what we want to take here is acceptance rate, scores, how they imply in it, financial aid average that comes across these against the tuitions and fees that we incur during our time in college. National university statistics, 214 public, 191 private schools. Again, same thing. We're looking at expenses. We're looking at average financial aid, and we're looking at, the scores and the acceptance rates, into this. A little bit higher, SAT scores, but you can see that the acceptance rate was a little bit lower. So this is interesting right here. And we have this in here. So this is back from 2020, but we're not necessarily, sometimes we got to think out of the box, right? In terms of cost and how does, college expenses fit into our financial plan. But this below article here from 2020, it's still, the numbers will probably need to be updated, but it's still the case that the University of Houston offers in-state tuition to California students who rank in the top 25% of their class and hit a minimum SAT score. The annual cost of, so that would be an out of state. They have, they got the acceptance to it, and it's significantly lower than the cost that would be incurred if you were in college in California. This is just an example of it, but it's also a reminder to be a little more open-minded when we're looking at college expenses. I do know that there's some of that between Texas and some of the Oklahoma schools. And there's these relationships between that actually offer a discount or in-state tuition fees for out-of-state residents in here. 21% of college students, attend private college and universities. Nearly all private colleges give some type of merit scholarship. In some cases, again, even if we have higher incomes, you can qualify for some needs-based aid, at some of these more expensive, college and universities. The more expensive the institution, the more likely families would qualify for some need-based financial aid. Again, the top 20 colleges that award, the largest merit scholarships. Here's a list of that. And then the average merit aid for a freshman, without the needs cost in here, this is the cost, this is the amount that they give out, for that age. This is, and the universities are all spread out throughout the country here. Again, most students receiving, merit aid. This is another list of who gives, merit aid and the percentage of students receiving it. So aid is out there and it is available. We got to go find it, and get access to it. Ultimately, when we look at it, we always want our kids to attend the best colleges. I mean, sometimes, if the financial plan, allows for it, it might be an alma mater of parents that we want to attend. But this study, Alan Kruger at Princeton University, Stacy Dale at Mathematica Policy Research. Ultimately, this concluded that the students who were accepted into elite schools but went to less selective institutions earned salaries just as high as Ivy League grads. And, I kind of find that, interesting when we look at it, that the university is not all that comes, the name and the brand of the university is not as big as a component on the averages in terms of, how, what we define as successful in the workforce as we make that transition. The enlightening part of this study is this was across 30 years, right? So this is not just a 1 or 2 time study, 2-year study. This has been going on for quite a while. Ultimately, these findings, I really wanted to bring some comfort and make some, parents and students less anxious about the admission process. And we don't always have to shoot for the, advanced or the Ivy League, schools there with the expectation that I wouldn't be able to, make as much or earn as much in my working career. So we went through a lot. Ultimately, you can't start, planning soon enough, but there's also not too late as well. Ultimately, this is a key piece that falls into your financial plan. And I would encourage you, if you don't have that in place or you want to, please reach out to myself, as Bogart Worth in general. We can plug in this data as we run a financial plan. It's complimentary, and it's a way for us to get to know each other as we work with it. Again, this is part of our series of webinars. We do have others that come out. We have different themes. Primarily it does, recur around retirement topics and usage of how do you apply your benefits to your best interests in here. Again, my name is Daniel Evans, certified financial planner, financial advisor here at Bogart Wealth. I want to thank you for joining us today. I know this was very, kind of high level and educational, and really just wanted to start framing the thought process as we, take the scenarios and the what ifs around college expenses and we start to put them in paper. So again, thank you very much for joining today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.